Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Amanda.
And we're your hosts.
We're a traveling couple and digital nomads taking you on our adventures as we explore locations, destinations, and careers.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you in part by Casco Antiguo Language School. Casco Antiguo Language School offers Spanish language immersion programs in Latin America's coolest neighborhood, Panama City's old quarter, Casco Antiguo. Their one-on-one or small group classes allow you to get out of the classroom and learn Spanish in real-life settings. When we were living in Panama City, we were able to take classes in person, enjoy activities after class every single day. And now that's not really the case with everything that's happening with the pandemic. But the really cool thing is that you can actually learn Spanish from anywhere in the world. So if you've been curious about studying Spanish, then you can actually study with Casco Antiguo Language School from wherever in the world you are. We were able to take our classes online after we went home to Canada, and we were able to continue them through the spring and through the summer while we were in Canada. And it was so awesome to be able to do our classes via Zoom online with our same teacher, and we saw so many improvements in our Spanish during that time. So if you want to get started with your Spanish language journey, you can head on over to cascospanish.com and book your free 30-minute session to find out what level you're at, meet the teachers, and all of that good stuff. So once again, cascospanish.com to book your trial class.
All right. And so today we are excited to be sharing a destination episode that is a bit of a long time in the making. So we're going to be talking about Boquete, Panama, a place that we traveled to almost a year ago, basically a year ago, the final weekend of January in 2020. And now that the borders in Panama and flights to Panama are running once again and open once again, we thought it'd be a good time to put it out there. Right now in Panama, they are dealing with a rise in cases of COVID. So the government has put in lots of measures and restrictions. So obviously with anything, and especially right now, do your research before you're planning anything. But the entrance requirements as of right now when we're recording are that you need to have a negative test within 48 hours of arrival. If you can't get one, you can take one upon arrival. And then once you have your negative test, there's no quarantine requirements. However, at the moment, there are large movement restrictions in place. So definitely be aware of that. But we thought it's time. We can't just keep sitting on this. Boquete is a wonderful, amazing, spectacular place. Truly a gem of a place. And I don't want to say hidden gem because it's relatively well known. But for a lot of people who have maybe traveled Costa Rica, Mexico, Colombia, Panama kind of gets left off a lot of lists, and maybe people just check out Panama City, not really many of the other places. Boquete is stunning and incredible. So we were really excited to check it out when we were there, and just even starting to prepare for this episode made us think like, oh, we need to get back again. So we are diving into everything about Boquete, Panama.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Boquete is a small mountain town in the westernmost province of Chiriquí. So Chiriquí actually borders Costa Rica, and Boquete is really close to David. So David is the biggest city that you would fly into if you weren't driving, and it is located in the mountain highlands. So basically, when you arrive there, you arrive and you see a ton of lush greenery, you see a ton of mountains, and then you actually drive down into a valley to get to Boquete. So Boquete actually means bucket. So if you can imagine a bucket, Boquete is at the bottom of said bucket, which makes it a really, really wonderful climate and temperature. Especially in dry season, it really felt like Canadian summer to us while we were there. And it's got a ton of natural landscapes and a ton of nature activities to do. It's a pretty small town, according to Wikipedia's population. It is about 19,000. This is a bit of old data, so I'm sure it's grown quite a bit. And it is known for It's coffee and chocolate, and it's a really popular spot with retirees. So we didn't see a ton of nomads there or a ton of backpackers, really, but there are definitely a ton of retirees there. And we really wanted to highlight Boquete because, like Ryan said before, I think a lot of people who are traveling between Costa Rica and Colombia will do the San Blas Islands. They'll hop over to Panama City for a day or two. They'll hit Bocas del Toro on their way in or out. And that's all they really do. And Panama has a lot more to offer other than that. And Boquete was one of our favorite spots while we were there.
Yeah, so it was something that was on our list right from the start. We planned it relatively early on. And so we flew from Panama City into David. We rented a car. And then we spent 4 days in the area before reversing that, driving back to David, flying back to Panama City. So altogether, a pretty short journey. Flying is not a very long flight at all. So let's dive in and hear from bright-eyed and bushy-tailed early 2020 Amanda and Ryan. And obviously, all these recordings are from early 2020, so pre-pandemic. If it sounds weird or out of place, we're not currently traveling in Boquete and Panama. So these are all from early 2020. So we arrived in David and we landed at the airport. The airport's a nice little small airport, so there's not much walking to do. Went out of the airport, rented a car, and now are in a car about 30 minutes away from Boquete.
Yeah, and we're going to be in Boquete from today, which is Thursday, until the evening on Sunday when we'll fly back to Panama City. And Boquete is a place that we've heard tons of great things about. All the local people describe it as great weather, eternal spring, a little bit more fresh feeling than the city, and there's tons of greenery and mountains out here, and it's famous for its coffee. So we are super excited to explore.
Yeah, it's kind of cool when you get out of the airport. David is kind of on a plain, and so both of us didn't really notice the mountains until we started driving and could realize, oh, that's not just a cloud. Behind the cloud, there's like a big mountain in the background. So it's fun, and I think we're both looking forward for a taste of fresh air.
Yeah, Panama City is hot, and we are not complaining, being that we are casually escaping winter in Canada, but it is hot. It's hot every day, and there isn't much reprieve from it. It cools down a little bit at night, and there is a little bit of wind, which is super great, but yeah, just excited for like the eternal spring temperatures, you know, around 25 degrees Celsius, or if you work in Fahrenheit, I think probably around 75 or 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And for us, it's just the perfect temperatures, and then combine that with nature, and it's a recipe for a good time.
Yeah, so we are going to turn on some Spanish tunes and bump a little music on our way to Boquete, and then check into our Airbnb, and then check in with you guys a little bit later on, and today our first day in Boquete.
So we just got back to our car after checking out one of the miradors here in Boquete. And so far, we are really loving Boquete. We've had our first meal, we've grabbed our first coffee, and just checked out some of the incredible views here. And what are your first impressions of Boquete?
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to have anything other than a good first impression. As you drive up from David, you're kind of consistently climbing the mountain. It's not like a super steep road. It's a 2-lane each way highway. So big highway, but you're consistently going up. And then it's kind of one of those like perfect settings where you come over the crest of a mountain and kind of weave down into town. It's super lush, super green, mountains kind of all around it, surrounding the little town in the center. And then, yeah, really nice little town, lots of people around, lots of activity. And so I think it's really hard to have nothing but a good first impression, especially on a beautiful sunny day like today.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And we were just talking about, as we were admiring the lush mountains, just how nice it is to be here. Of course, we love being in the city. There's so much great stuff about Panama City, but it's also really nice to just be out in a mountainous area. As you guys know, we call the Canadian Rockies home, and we love being out in nature. We love being, amongst the trees. And this is like the perfect balance for us, where we can have, a really cool little city experience, and experience what the culture is like here and what everything's like, but then also just get to take in like all the beautiful sights. And it is a stunning, perfectly temperatured day today. So we are really excited to keep exploring.
So like Amanda mentioned before, Boquete is a smaller town, and so what it's really great for is as a launching point for adventure. Chiriqui is full of interesting, amazing stuff to do, and you can drive around, you can explore, you can hike, you can adventure, and one of the best things to do as well is to sample some of the local products. So it's famous for coffee, but you can also get really great strawberries there, which we did a check-in at a place called Fresas Mary. So we are sitting on the outskirts of Boquete at Fresas Mary, which is Mary's strawberries, eating a delicious strawberries and cream as a gigantic, incredibly loud truck just happens to drive by at the exact moment that I press start on the recorder. And so we talked a little bit before about the setting of Boquete. It's up in the mountains on the side of a volcano and actually kind of surrounded by mountains. And because of that, it's actually at quite a high elevation. It gets up to around 3,000 meters at some of the highest points in this region. A lot of them are around 2,000 meters. So that is, really high, higher than lots of places in Colorado, lots of places in Western Canada. And because of that, the temperatures cool off quite a bit. Right now, it's sunny middle of the day and a beautiful, probably 23 degrees. What do you think about the temperature right now?
I am in climate bliss right now. This is like my perfect temperature. Hot sun, little bit of a breeze, so it doesn't feel too intense. It feels like nice and fresh while you're in the shade. It's like, still, you're wearing pants and a t-shirt. I'm wearing like 3/4 length pants and a tank top. And I feel like this is like the perfect sort of climate for me. It's not too hot and it's not cold by any means. So I'm a happy camper.
Yeah, and we just finished a drive around. We went up on the east side of the city, further past, like through the downtown. There's kind of a loop around on a road you can take that doesn't actually lead anywhere. Thus the loop around. And it was a really, really beautiful drive. About 20 minutes driving through, up around mountains. You saw some waterfalls and all types of farms, coffee farms, different fruits and vegetables. You can really see the lushness of this area. I think when people think about Panama, the first thought probably goes to beaches or Panama City. And up here in the mountains, close to Costa Rica, it is very much like some of the more typical Costa Rican imagery that you might think of in terms of the lush jungle, the mountain activities, all of that type of stuff. So really beautiful, beautiful setting, beautiful weather, and lots to do.
Yeah, and we have only been here for a couple of hours so far, and already we were talking about how we love it here. I feel like this is quickly becoming one of my favorite places that I've been, and a city that not even like a city, like it's a really small kind of pueblo, really small city. It's just really peaceful. It's tranquil. It's beautiful. The sights are awesome. Everyone that we've interacted with has been super friendly. The prices are a little lower than Panama City from what we've seen so far. And I just feel like I'm already really, really in love with Boquete. So love at first sight for me.
Yeah, and so we're going to dive back into these beautiful red strawberries with some amazing whipped cream and see you all in a little bit.
So we spent the rest of day 1 in Boquete driving around, walking around town, eating some good food, drinking some good coffee, just really taking in all the sights and sounds of Boquete and enjoying the perfect weather that we were feeling pretty obsessed with at the time. And we meet you again at the start of day 2 in the midst of a very hard hike. All right, let's get to it.
Welcome to day 2 in Boquete. We just got finished hauling our butts up a short but steep
Very
hike.
steep.
And so where are we right now?
We are at Cerro Piedra
De Lino.
de Lino. Piedra de Lino.
Lino Rock.
Yeah, and there's actually a big rock, a big slab of rock at the top of this hike. And so we went pretty much straight up a mountain for like 45-ish minutes. And then we're kind of on par with the rest of the valley around here. Obviously, the volcano's a little higher than us, quite a bit higher than us. And we have such a beautiful view of everything that is here in Boquete.
Yeah, I think that if you go to Boquete, if you're fit, this is an incredible hike. It's hard.
It's hard. Like, we hike quite a bit, and I found this hike quite challenging, and we haven't gone down yet, and I have a feeling that my butt and the earth are going to make a relationship on the way down.
But it is an amazing view. 360 degrees. You can see the town of Boquete, the mountains. You can see the volcano. In the distance, you can see the Pacific Ocean over past David, and you might be able to hear a gust of wind blowing in the background, but it is a beautiful sunny day, and I can't think of many better spots to be enjoying it than here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is, what time is it? 10:45 a.m. So we're going to hike back down, probably take us 30 to 45 minutes to get back down, head into town for some coffee and some food, have a little rest before we go on a little afternoon adventure. So we are back in the car and we are off on our next adventure. Where are we going, Ryan?
We are going, and pardon my pronunciation, to Los Cangilones de Gualaca.
And what is that?
Well, we'll give a better description of when we get there, but it is a really cool part of a river kind of carved into a big slab of rock. So we'll give a bit more of a description when we get there, but it's about 40 minutes from Boquete, the center of town, out kind of in the direction of the coast, a bit down off the mountain, and a really cool place where hopefully we'll be able to cool off and do some swimming because it's hot.
Yeah, it is another beautiful day in Boquete, and after sweating our faces off on the mountain this morning, we have nourished with some food. We had a good feed at a really popular restaurant called Sugar and Spice here, which was delicious. Stocked up on some coffee, some snacks, and now we are on our way for our afternoon adventure. So we will give you more details once we arrive there in about 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. All right, so we have arrived at Gualaca. And basically what it's like is there's actually a lot of people. We're here on a Friday afternoon. You can probably hear like kids in the background, a little bit of music, definitely lots of splashing. And so we'll just describe a little bit of what it looks like. So it actually kind of looks like what you would imagine part of a water ride at a amusement park would look like. In terms of like there's these walls, kind of like a canyon wall, and there's water that runs through it, and there's different depths and stuff like that, and the canyon isn't too wide, like it would fit, a floaty or a tube or something down it. And basically there's just a bunch of people hanging out, lots of people having drinks and, playing, lots of kids, that sort of thing, and people are just jumping into the water and just enjoying their Friday afternoon. What are your sort of first thoughts of being here?
Yeah, it's just a really cool spot. I could imagine this being like a real go-to spot in the summer if you lived here. In Panama, they call December through, I think, April, March, summer. Kids are out of school, it's hot, it's dry, and so I'd imagine this place is crazy busy. But it's really cool. Like you said, it's this really weird river that's cut through canyon walls on either side, and at the end it opens up. So at the end there's lots of kids and families sitting around, and up in the middle there's lots of more of like teenager types jumping in. It's probably maybe like 3 meters from the highest point into the water, and the water's really, really deep. So I'm not really sure of the geology in terms of how this eroded and came to be, because it's a really remarkable place. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it, but really weird. It kind of makes me recall going to the Continental Divide in Iceland, but like narrower and obviously different. But yeah, really, really cool spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we both have taken a turn jumping into the water, and it's also surprisingly warm, especially considering how deep it is. So that's a nice surprise. And, it's kind of the perfect temperature. Like, it's nice and warm outside, the sun is shining, and it's cool enough that it gives you that kind of refreshing feeling that water does, but not so cool that it's like you're freezing cold or anything. So we're going to keep enjoying here, and we will update you a little later. So once we finished exploring Gualaca and swimming around, we jumped back in the car and headed back to Boquete. And like we mentioned before, it was about a 40-minute drive. And this was our first time driving in Panama. And for many people listening, it might sound a little bit terrifying to rent a car in a Latin American country and drive, because we hear all these crazy stories and about all these crazy situations. But driving around the Boquete area and in the state of Chiriquí, in our experience, was quite tranquilo, quite relaxing. The roads were really nice. There was lots of big 2-lane highways, well-marked roads, not too many potholes or anything like that. So it was a really good driving experience for this particular trip. Now, later on in our time in Panama, Ryan actually drove in Panama City, and I think that was maybe a little bit of a different situation. But if you are interested in going to Boquete, having a car is really awesome because it allows you to get out of the town and really enjoy nature without having to worry about taxis or tours or colectivos and that type of thing. And we really loved having our car for this trip.
Yeah, absolutely. We just got really, I think, a small taste of what you can do there. Panama's biggest mountain is right in that area. You can hike that. It's a giant volcano. And there's so many other hikes to enjoy in that region that are a lot harder to access if you don't have a car. But you definitely are collectivos and buses, as a side note. And so we drove back to Boquete, settled back into the town, and actually went and had a drink over at Boquete Brewing, which is a local craft brewery. And in Boquete, there's lots of really cool stuff going on, from cafes to restaurants and to breweries. So we really enjoyed going to Boquete Brewing. I had a couple different beers. Amanda, I think you had rosé cider every time we went there.
Yes.
And it was really great. And so that was it for that day. And then the next day, we actually got up and went and did a waterfall hike. So we will join you from the waterfall, which you'll hear very clearly with a bit of a roar in the background.
Hey, we are currently on the 3 waterfalls, or the Lost Waterfalls hike. And we just arrived to the second waterfall, and you can probably hear the sounds of it in the background. It is super impressive and super beautiful, and just in the most gorgeous setting, like everything else in Boquete, with all the lush greenery. And this is just a fabulous hike. So we are definitely adding this hike to our must-do list for Boquete.
Yeah, and there's beautiful sun shining through the trees. Really, really awesome mix. And we're going to continue on since there's a loud waterfall blaring in the background. So we just hit the turnaround point on the Lost Waterfalls Trail, or the 3 Waterfalls Trail, whichever one you want to call it. And yeah, it's a really cool trail. It took us about 40 minutes to get from the bottom all the way up to the 3rd waterfall, and then we're going to head back and probably stop above the 2nd waterfall. There's a nice little pool which was in the sun, and might stop there and dip our feet in the water, and then kind of make our way back towards the end of the hike.
Yeah, and this is one of the hikes that if you Google things to do in Boquete, it comes up as one of the top things. This is definitely the hike or the activity where we've seen the most other people. It's also a Saturday, so that probably adds to it as well. But I can definitely understand why. This hike is super beautiful. The trail is pretty moderate. It's up and down, a little bit muddy, but overall a really solid hiking trail. And not only do you get to see 1 waterfall, but you get to see 3. So there's a lot of bang for your buck here.
Yeah, pretty short and sweet. I think we hit the first waterfall within like 20 minutes. It definitely, I think, surprised me a little bit in terms of the difficulty on the ups and downs at some points, but overall, really nice hike. It does have an entrance fee, which is $8 right now. It seems like prices can change quickly, so it may be different when you come, but pretty short, sweet hike, which would be great for do for a couple hours in the afternoon one day if you're looking to get in some exercise. There's a ton of hikes in the area. as well. Lots of other waterfalls you can go and watch if you're looking for something that might not have that high of a price.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to head back to the second waterfall, like Ryan said, maybe have a little swim, head back to the first waterfall, and then head on out to continue with our day. So during those clips, you hear us mention this waterfall hike being called the Three Waterfalls hike or the Lost Waterfalls hike. And this is because it kind of actually has both names and it's a little bit confusing. On the map, it's called the Lost Waterfalls. So if you're using Google Maps, you're looking for the Lost Waterfalls. But once you actually arrive there, you're driving until you see something that says the Lost Waterfalls in Spanish. So you can just ask locals that are around there and you'll be able to find the trail. There's like a ticket office and stuff once you walk a little bit. It's super awesome. We definitely recommend it. And like we've mentioned a lot already in this episode, there are so many different hikes to do, so many different waterfalls to go explore. So I would just do a little bit of research to kind of figure out what you are most excited about, and then definitely check out some of the nature of Boquete because it is absolutely stunning. So we headed from the Lost Waterfalls hike back into town, and we spent a pretty relaxing afternoon at one of our favorite cafes across Panama called Cafe Unido. They have amazing local coffee there, and we just enjoyed what Boquete is known for, which is the coffee. You can actually go on coffee tours in Boquete, so you can learn about the process of coffee. Unfortunately, it didn't really work with our schedule at that time. Plus, this is actually something we've done before. So instead of doing a tour of something we were kind of familiar with the process already, we decided to just be connoisseurs of the product. And we had a very relaxing afternoon, just reading, lounging in the sun, drinking coffee, like I mentioned, eating some dinner, having some drinks, all that good stuff before heading into our final day in Boquete. How did we kick off day 4?
Yeah, so for the last day, we actually had a really unique and interesting experience. So something you can do in Boquete is actually go to a honey farm. So it's called Boquete Bees and Butterflies. And they also have a little butterfly area. I don't know what the proper word for it is, where you can go and do yoga. So we did a yoga class in a butterfly area with all these butterflies floating around and flowers all around, which is really, really nice. And then from the yoga class, we actually went and did a honey tasting, which was one of the more fascinating things I think I've done in quite a while. And it was really cool. I think we probably got to try 30 types of honey.
Yeah, we tried so much honey.
Yeah. And so a lot of things we didn't know, but just how the taste of the honey will be different depending on the pollen that the bees are eating. And so normally if you go to the store and buy honey, it's honey from all sorts of different hives. But what they do at this place in Boquete and lots of other more like craft honey places is separate the hives and produce the honey in kind of like single batches. So you'll have honey that came from bees that were living by a lavender plant or a cherry tree or many, many different other things. And then you go from there to different infusions like canela, cinnamon, and all sorts of things. So we got to sit and try all sorts of honey, which I can't recommend highly enough. Like if you can go on a honey tasting experience, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, assuming you like honey, which we both do, it was just amazing. I was like ready for more honey at the end, and we actually bought a really amazing honey that we were able to take back with us. So after our yoga/honey experience, we hopped into the car and we headed back into David. We had a kind of early evening, late afternoon flight. So we had to head in a couple hours early. So we headed in about midday to drop off our car and get back on the plane to head back to Panama City. So we meet you at the airport.
All right, so we are now at the airport in David, getting ready for our flight back to Panama City.
Yeah, and we just wanted to talk a little bit about our fourth and final day here in Boquete. I guess we're not there anymore. And so we woke up this morning. We went to a really nice yoga class in a butterfly pavilion, which is at the honeybee farm in Boquete. And then after the yoga class, which was great after a couple of days of hiking, we were super stiff, we did a honey tasting. And the honey tasting was super cool and definitely one of those like unique things that I feel like maybe most people don't do in Boquete, but that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's something that I hadn't ever really considered and probably wouldn't have unless we went there. And really cool. It's I don't know what you call it, a honey farm, I guess a bee farm. And so you can taste all the different varieties of honey. I guess normally what happens with honey is that they kind of mix it all together, all sorts of bees from all different hives. But what these guys do is have colonies of bees in different places so that they're feeding on different types of flowers and plants. And so they'll separate their honeys into kind of like single origin batches. So you can really taste the differences between the honeys based off what type of bee and what type of food that bee has been eating. So that was a really cool experience. And after that, we went and got some food and had one final coffee in Boquete before heading back down to David. It's about 50 minutes from kind of the heart of Boquete to the airport in David, pass through everything in David, really calm, small airport. Now we're just waiting here for our flight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the great things about traveling, domestically, and then also just traveling from a smaller airport is that things are super chill. We arrive, there's not much happening. There's only one there's international or national. We headed to the national. You go through really, really quick security, and then we're just in this waiting area for our flight, which is going to be, boarding within an hour.
Yeah, and so we're headed back to Panama City, and we will catch up a little bit later in terms of what our favorite things were about Boquete and do an overall trip recap.
All right, that wraps up our trip to Boquete in the state of Chiriquí in Panama. Hopefully, this leaves you feeling excited to visit this amazing place one day in the future. And if it's not clear already throughout this episode, we really love this trip. It was super refreshing to get out of the city. It was amazing to be in slightly cooler, more refreshing weather. And it was awesome to have a car so that we could hike and explore nature and do all of the fun stuff that was surrounding this small town while being able to come home every single afternoon or evening and enjoy the small town vibes. What were your sort of overall impressions of Boquete?
Yeah, I had a really, really good impression of it. Going in, not knowing a ton other than like, hey, this is a spot where there's been like quite a few retirees in the past. Wasn't really sure what to think of like going to the town, but just from the moment you get there, so you drive like up, and then get to this point where you can see down into the valley Boquete's in, and it's so lush and so green. And then you get out and there's just like the tiniest little bit of coolness in the air, which is so nice after being in like plus 30 humid coastal weather. And then, yeah, just the area is so like teeming with life. So there's agriculture everywhere. There's coffee growing. There's people who are selling fruits on the side of the road. That's really, really special, amazing. And it was awesome to get out and enjoy nature. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about our experience there. And even sitting down, we're recording this almost a year later. Definitely looking back with fond memories, thinking back to those views that we had there on our hike. And like, oh yeah, I need to get back there. And it's definitely a place where it seems like maybe 10-ish, maybe even more than that years ago, Boquete was really known as a retiree spot. And I don't know enough about it to speak confidently on it, but it seems like maybe that's kind of a little bit less the case now. And it does seem like there's more people who are kind of coming there from other areas of Panama, and then people coming from other places of the world who are, entrepreneurs, people starting businesses, people who are, working remotely. That seems to be growing as well. And it seems like a really cool place to spend, a couple months. It'd be a little bit more low key, of course, a little bit more about like the nature than, the excitement and the lights and the glamour of city life. But I think a really cool place where we could definitely see ourselves spending some more consistent time in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And I would also second what you said, Ryan, just about the fact that this trip was pretty close to a year ago, and just listening through to these clips and looking back at photos just takes me right back to just feeling so relaxed and at ease there and just really wanting to get back to Panama. If you guys have followed along over the last year or so, you know we left Panama pretty unexpectedly when the pandemic hit, and there are lots of things still on our list that we want to explore there. And I know that going back to Boquete and spending some more time there is pretty high up on that list. So hopefully you are feeling excited about adding Boquete to your list. Hopefully visiting Panama is in your plans. And don't forget that if you want to learn Spanish before you head down to Latin America, before you visit Panama, check out cascospanish.com and visit our friends at Casco Antiguo Spanish School. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you want more, make sure to check out the World Wonders Insider, available on Patreon at patreon.com/theworldwanderers.
For show notes, head over to theworldwanderers.com. Find us on social media at The World Wanderers Podcast and join the private Facebook community at World Wanderers, a community for travelers.
You can always get in touch with us at info@theworldwanderers.com. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us find new listeners.
See you next time.